So the first thing I did was to get a block of wood. I've chosen angsana, which is a hardwood that grows in my country. Then I drew out the outline of the ring. But how did I get Cara's ring size, you might ask? Well, as it turns out, my favorite earring store also happens to sell cheap rings. So I told Cara that I wanted to look at some earrings for myself. And while we were there, we had a bit of fun trying on some rings. After that, I just had to come back and buy one of the rings that Cara had tried on. And just like that, I had her ring size. So after drawing out the ring, I cut off that portion of the wood to make it easier to work with. And I wanted to make this ring a bit exciting, so I drilled a hole in the side of it, mixed up some blue epoxy resin, and then I used this to fill the hole. After that, I hid it in the storeroom to let it dry. Cara hates going in here, so I was pretty sure she wasn't gonna find it. And after a couple of days, it was dry. So I drilled out the center of the ring, made sure that the hole was the right size to fit Cara's finger, and then I used a fret saw to cut out the exterior. At this point, the ring was extremely thick, so I just cut out the portions that I didn't need. Alright, I think that's a much more manageable size. After that, I used my circular sander to roughly shape the ring. I used 150 grit sandpaper to remove any sharp edges, and then I used a needle file to add in some curves. I wanted to have a little S-shaped channel running through the top of the ring, so I carved that out using a penknife, and then I sanded down the entire thing using sandpaper, starting from 150 grit and ending with 1000 grit. At this point, the epoxy resin insert was still very cloudy, so I dipped my sandpaper in water and wet sanded this portion, starting with 800 grit sandpaper and moving up until I hit 2000 grit sandpaper. And you can see that this makes the epoxy resin look much clearer. However, I wanted a mirror shine on the epoxy resin. To achieve this, I got some polishing compound, mixed in a bit of water, dabbed it on a polishing cloth, and then I polished the hell out of the epoxy resin. And now it reflects light! Fantastic! After that, I hid it in the storeroom again to let it dry out for a few days. Once it was dry, I got some wood oil and applied it all over the ring. Alright, we're gonna let this dry, and now we're gonna figure out how to put some diamonds in this thing. So the thing about diamonds is that they're so highly polished that glue doesn't stick to their surface, which is why diamonds are usually held in place by metal prongs. This is known as setting a diamond. So what I need is a diamond that has already been set in metal. I can then glue the metal to the wood of the ring, and that should hold pretty well. So I got a pair of diamond earrings. I was gonna buy a single earring, but it turns out that buying a pair of earrings is actually around the same price, so I guess this ring is gonna have 2 diamonds. So I cut off the stud portions of the earrings, leaving just the diamond and the metal setting. Then I carefully drilled 2 shallow holes in the ring, mixed up some transparent epoxy resin, added a couple of drops to each hole, then I very carefully put the diamonds in and left it to dry for a few days. And once it was dry, I had 2 diamonds sitting nicely in the ring. I polished the epoxy resin one last time to get rid of any residue from the wood oil. There we go, nice and shiny again. And then I was done! I know it may not be the best looking ring around, but it's the best I can do. Alright, now all I have to do is give it to Cara.